When are they getting rid of Carmelo, and where is he going?
Well, I got to give you credit, Booms. You've been pretty spot on with Carmelo. You know, I remember Carmelo Anthony back in the day when I played against him when he was in a Nugget uniform, and he was an elite athlete and an elite defender that could just dominate a game, you know, with his ability to score. And, you know, this year, a funny little gentleman's bet Alan Hahn and I had was I thought Carmelo Anthony would get over 20 dunks. Alan Hahn said no way at the beginning of the year. Do you know how many dunks he ended up with at the end of the year? 12. He only had 12 dunks. So what that says to me is that he's not the same athletically. He's still a great jump shooter. He's still a great one-on-one player, has a great pull-up game. And actually, I think his three-point shooting has gotten better as he's gotten older in his career, but he's just lost a step physically and athletically. And in the NBA now, the game is changing. I mean, we saw the finals, the way those two teams were running up and down the floor, how young those guys are, how athletic those guys are. And the fact that Carmelo Anthony, I remember him getting 5 dunks in a game back in his prime. In his athletic prime, and now he only had 12 dunks for the season. That's just a sign of how his body has lost a step physically.
Well, there's no question about that, and also just the whole lack of leadership and all that other stuff, highest paid player and all that. But I was just wondering, you know, when Phil Jackson came out and said what he said in regards to Carmelo Anthony and and waiving the no trade clause and all that other stuff. I mean, as a former NBA player, were you taken aback by what Phil was saying, given the fact that it was real and it's exactly what should be said?
Phil doesn't pull punches. He doesn't mess around. I remember we played against Phil in the playoffs 2-3 years in a row when I was with the Timberwolves, and he took some shots at me at the media, and I was like, really? Really? I mean, here I was coming off a great regular season, second leading scorer for the Timberwolves, and he just went right at me. And that's what he does. You know, he plays mind games. He's not afraid to speak the truth. He's seen enough on the floor where, you know, he's been there for 3 years. Carmelo Anthony's been there for 3 years, and Carmelo still puts up points. He still gets to the All-Star game, but the league has gotten good. You know, other teams have really gotten improved, especially in the East. And, you know, the Knicks, the fact that they weren't able to win with Carmelo Anthony on this roster, I think Phil is figuring out, you know, we need to go in maybe in a different direction. We need to start the rebuilding process. It's unfortunate that they didn't start the rebuilding process 3 years ago because they thought with Carmelo Anthony in a Knick uniform they would be able to make the playoffs, they would be able to compete and win games, and it hasn't happened. So the past 3 years have kind of set them back a little bit, but I think it's time to kind of rebuild and go young and kind of reinvigorate the garden with some youth and athleticism and young talent, because that's where the game's going right now.
Talking to Wally Szczerbiak, listen, we all agree with all that. The problem is that the guy that's making the ultimate decisions has not shown a propensity to make the right ones time and time and time again. And, you know, you have to, unless they waive Carmelo Anthony, the notion that they'll do whatever they want, they can't because they gave him the no trade clause. But I want to go back because I'm bothered by what you said about the Frank. Because I don't know what it's, and I respect how you know more basketball than we do for sure, but I'm trying to figure out what it's based on. Like, he's an 18-year-old kid, so I don't know how battle-tested he could possibly be. Everyone that's seen him play in person has said that physically he's going to have a tough time defending in the NBA. No one questions his athletic ability, his speed, the fact that he's a pass-first type of point guard. But, I mean, he's a kid. He's an 18-year-old kid playing in Europe. That's not NBA ready.
Yeah, well, look at what Porzingis came in and did. And he was that same skinny 18-year-old kid playing in Europe, putting up 7 points a game. So, you know, I agree with you. It's tough to project what's going to happen with guys like that. But I trust a lot of the European kids coming over. I really do. It's not like it used to be where culturally when they come over they didn't really fit in. You know, the rap music was a little bit kind of intimidating back in, you know, the mid-'90s and stuff like that, where culturally they weren't comfortable. Now kids come over and they're comfortable. They really are. And they're comfortable with their surroundings. They're comfortable with their teammates. I think NBA players have embraced international talent because you see guys like Ginobili, you see guys like Tony Parker, Stojakovic, you name it. I mean, Dirk Nowitzki, you know, is going to be a Hall of Famer. These guys have made a big-time niche niche in this league, and all these kids overseas, they know the NBA is the best. If you want to play with the best, you go to the NBA and you play with the best, and you showcase your talents there. And this is a kid who's playing in meaningful games against pros, and those guys over there are pretty good.
There's another part of it. These kids are not a part of any AAU teams.
Exactly.
Which is like the best part of all of this stuff, because they don't come in with a chip on their shoulder thinking they're the greatest players.
Exactly.
Because some guy at the age of 13 was telling him how great he was, and that's all he knows for the next 5 or 6 years. Hey, what about Porzingis and him blowing off his exit meetings and all this nonsense and everything he's talking about? Where is his head at? What are you hearing about him?
Well, I hope he's just in the gym, like his Instagram is showing, and working out, because that's what he needs to do. He was Mr. Style this year on the bench with the colored shoes and all the tight pants and tight clothes and skinny jeans and stuff like that, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want you. If I'm a Knicks fan, I want him focusing on basketball in the off season, because he can put up numbers. He can really score. There was obviously some, stuff going on behind the scenes with the Knicks that, he wasn't happy about.
Yeah, but what stuff is that? What stuff are we talking about? We talking about Hornacek? We talking about non-defense? We talking about Carmelo Anthony and Phil Jackson? What are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. I think the main thing was probably whether to play the triangle or not to play the triangle, and I think that was probably the issue. And it's obvious that either you're playing the triangle or you're going to be out of town. So the players got to deal with that. And there's nothing wrong with the triangle. It's a glorified motion offense that's won championships. So if you can play in any offense, and the triangle should suit guys that are fundamentally solid, can make each other better, can pass, can cut, can move, and can knock down shots. And
the problem though is that
if you can do that. I've had enough of complaining about the triangle, because I looked at myself as a pretty good offensive player. I could have played in any offense. We could have not run one play, and I would have figured out a way to get 20 points a game. So it doesn't matter what offense you're running. Go out there and play it. Go out there and do it. Go out there and play hard and figure out a way to win games.
I think it's probably confusing for.
I think that's something that Porzingis, he's got a ton of talent. And is he going to be that Hall of Fame level talent, or is he going to be, the second option on the team?
But while it's got to be confusing for a guy like Porzingis and anyone else that plays for this franchise, where you have the coach telling you one thing when the coach walks off the floor, the president of the team comes into the gym and pulls guys aside and starts running his own practice. That makes no sense at all.
Hey, listen, I played for Kevin McHale,
right?
And he was the general manager, vice president. And there were times where he was in practice working with the big men and dictating the way we played some. At times, there's nothing wrong with another voice coming
But he
down.
did it in conjunction with the head coach, not behind the head coach's back.
Well, I mean, trust me, Kevin McHale didn't always have the same outlook as Flip Saunders. He didn't want to, run a playbook that was 300 pages long like Flip Saunders did and call every single play. He had a few different philosophies, and he wasn't afraid to voice those. That happens. There's nothing wrong with that. Over the course of an 82-game season, when you're listening to the same head coach over and over and over again, there's nothing wrong with a guy with 11 rings coming down and helping out at a practice once in a while. I'm sorry.
Well,
that's the most ridiculous thing.
No, I disagree with you.
So
when
he can come in and say a few things. It's just unfortunate that overall the talent on this team was not able to win. And part of the reason why is because your star player, I mean, we start pointing fingers at Hornacek and Phil Jackson. The bottom line is Carmelo Anthony can't move on the defensive end of the floor. And when your defense is that bad because you got to cover up for Porzingis, who's not the most mobile guy, and he's trying to play the 4 with Hernan Gomez at the 5, and then Carmelo Anthony at the 3, you're slow with your foot speed at those 3 positions. Well, at those 2 positions. Hernan Gomez is fast at the 5 with his foot speed. So, I mean, offenses are breaking down the defense right and left. They're giving up a ton of points, and we're trying to point at a dysfunction between Phil Jackson and Jeff Hornacek.
Right.
The bottom line is you can't guard anyone because your guys can't move, and they can't keep up with the other team, and they're running circles around.
And then you ask yourself the question, who put the players on the court in the first place? Who made the decisions? I know that Phil Jackson did not make the decision to bring Carmelo here, but he did make the decision to give him a no-trade clause, which basically is hamstringing the Knicks right now, which brings me to my next question. Give me 1 or 2 teams that would want Carmelo Anthony, the slow-footed defensive player that no longer has the athleticism that he had once that scared everybody. what teams would want him right now, and what could the Knicks get for him, or are the Knicks going to have to do the stretch provision and basically buy him out?
We'll see. If the Knicks do the stretch provision, it's obvious that nobody wanted him. I would be shocked if nobody wanted him, especially with the way the salary cap's going, what he makes. You know, you put him on an elite team where maybe even he becomes a third or fourth option, maybe even a scorer off the bench on a NBA championship caliber team. I can't imagine there's no teams in the NBA of the 30 team or 29 teams that wouldn't want him.